Hey guys, welcome to T Heart Books. I am T. Welcome if you are new here. Y'all, today we are going to be talking about all the books that made me fall in love with reading again. Sometimes people may ask you, why do you read so much? How do you read so much? What do you find interesting about reading? And today I'm going to share with you how I fell in love with reading and those books that made me the book girly that I am today. So, let's talk about my reading journey. I will say that my reading journey is probably not unusual. From a young age, now, if you ask my family, they're going to tell you I was not a reader, but I have vivid memories of reading. But one of the biggest things that happened as an adult was I was finishing. So, as an adult, I was finishing my bachelor's degree, right? As an adult, I had three kids, husband, busy life. And I was like, look, I have always wanted to finish school. And so I went back to school. I went and got my bachelor's degree. Well, in the middle of that, of me going to school, I was ordained as a minister, right? I was an ordained minister, but in our denomination, once you're ordained as a minister, you go through what is called ministerial training. So that was 2 years of ministerial training, right? And so it was a lot of reading, a lot of between my education, school, and my ministerial training. It was a lot of papers, a lot of reading. So in between, like I always read like Christian help books, learning more understanding of the word, and help self help books and stuff like that. And so as I was finishing up, and once school was over, I realized I wanted to just read for fun, right? I have done all the other stuff and I just wanted to read for fun. And so I had started, there was this bookstore, it's a Christian bookstore in the town that I lived in. And at the time, they had a massive amount of Christian fiction books. And they had the other, type Christian books where you learn and different things like that, nonfiction books, but then they had a Christian fiction section. And I really wasn't too knowledgeable of Christian fiction. And so I was perusing through the bookstore and came across a book from Karen Kingsbury. And that was my first introduction to Christian fiction. And that was the Baxters, right? It was a Baxter family series. And I believe the first book that I read in that series was Redemption. And that started me on my path to my Christian fiction era. And so I was invested because it was clean. It was basically about family. Still kept God in the middle of the subject and in the middle of the reading. So I was like, oh, this is good. And so hence my falling in love with reading again, right? And so then I was like at a point where I want to just again read for fun. And then I felt like some of the books that I was reading, even in Christian fiction, was still a little bit heavy, right? Their subject matters were heavy, and but yet still, I don't know, it was still entertaining, but not like what I'm reading now. So once I started reading fiction, I discovered some other types of fiction, and that is like who was it? Liane Moriarty. I read a lot of her books, and that just opened up another door for me. And I read Big Little Lies, which is now it's a miniseries, right? I read Nine Perfect Strangers, And then I realized, look, I like these stories that are about relationships, family secrets, and a lot of complicated people. If you know, you know. If you read Liane, then you know. Very complicated, right? And so I started reading some of her books. And then I got into Elin Hilderbrand. And y'all, I was reading up Elin, right? And I was at the beach. I'm just like, I want to be at the beach. I want to be at Nantucket. And so I started reading some of her books. And so I was still reading Christian fiction. I still had my Karen Kingsbury books and some others in between. But those were the ones that I really like was invested in. And so then I discovered what's her name? Chanel Cleeton. I got my notes here, so I don't want to miss my books, y'all. So Chanel Cleeton, she wrote Next Year in Havana. There's two books. I believe there's three books in that series, but I read two, the first two. And that showed me like a different culture, and it also gave me like dual timelines and a little bit of historical fiction because it went back and to the historical setting of Havana, and then into now. And it was, I loved that book. It was so so good. And so those were some of my favorite books at the time. And mind you, this has been several years ago. But they stick with you, right? There's this thing about reading to me. It almost like takes you out of your it's very entertaining, right? But then it goes a little bit past entertaining sometimes because not only is it entertaining, but you also learn, right? Especially when you read diversely. And so I think that's a good part of being a book girly, right? And so the books that so then my taste started to change a little bit, right? So the books that changed my taste, I would say like I continue reading, but my taste in reading did change a little bit because look, Liane was auto buy. Aline Hildebrand was auto buy. I read a few of Chanel books, but then I started getting into like different genres, and I discovered um, different areas of reading. And so now I'm starting to think like, romance. Romance is good. Mysteries are good. And we'll talk about fantasy because I'll tell you how I got into that. But so when I first started reading again, it was they say women's fiction, but it was fiction. So Christian fiction, then into fiction, and then here comes romance. And I would say, oh, romance, the book that stood out to me when I was thinking about this was The People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. Y'all, that book was the cutest book to me. I love that book. I love the humor. And since I read that book, I um have read pretty much everything that Emily Henry has written out. People We Meet on Vacation was a good one. That kind of started, but book lovers. Y'all, I absolutely love book lovers. To me, Emily writes with humor. It's not too spicy, but it's just cute. It's just really cute. The characters are cute. The way she writes the towns, it's just so so cute. I like all of it. I do. And so then my taste in romance started to expand because I go from Emily Henry to Abby Jimenez to oh God, Lucy Score. Then it shifts some and we go into like Kennedy Ryan and Tia Williams and all of those authors. And y'all, I love a good romance. Now I will say, and y'all who've been on my channel know that I don't like a lot of spice. And if the spice is gonna be there, I need it to make sense, right? I don't need it to be so much spice and no story. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. But and don't let me forget the queen, Megan Quinn. And that was one I was a little apprehensive about because I heard her books was really spicy. But then I read, what was it? Where's Megan? Oh, Till Summer Do Us Part. And that one was that got me, and it was funny. And I think with her books, it has more story and more humor than spice, right? It's in there, but I can, skip over it, but yet don't miss the story. Okay. All right. And so then we go, and then my taste started to broaden a little bit more, and I went into mystery, right? I'm one of those girls that I would watch like Murder She Wrote, Matlock, the old ones, uh, Law and Order, all of those. I watch Criminal Minds quite a bit, but I had to back off Criminal Minds. It was getting too real. Um, and so I'm like, okay, let me dab my feet into some mystery. And I started off with Karen McManus, and I hope I'm saying her name right. And she wrote The Cousins, and that was a YA book, but it got me into the mystery genre. And that was one of the good books that I like. I loved mystery. It was light. It wasn't too heavy. It wasn't too dark. But it was able to kind of like, solve the problem, right? And so that was one of the books that started me off into my mystery series, my mystery genre. And now I got a whole bookshelf of mystery. Guys, let me see who I got up there. So we got Frida McFadden, Jennifer Lynn Barnes, um, again, Karen McManus, Lisa Jewell, Mary Kubica, Geneva Rose, um, let's see, Ashley Elston, Tiffany D. Jackson, and the list goes on and on and on. So you see how one book just opens your horizons to others. And now we have this. Okay, now let's chat about fantasy. Now, I was not a fantasy girly. I just didn't get the hype on uh fantasy, like, dragons and fighting back in the what's that, King Arthur days, all that kind of stuff. My husband watched those type of movies, and I just never really was interested. But this is what got me into fantasy: Rebecca Yarros, The Fourth Wing. That's what got me. And so the hype was real. So if y'all remember during the Fourth Wing, when Fourth Wing was coming out, everybody was talking about it. Young, old, everybody was talking about Fourth Wing, and that this was gonna be, it. FOMO. And I said, I'm gonna see what this is about. And I've been hooked. I have been hooked. Hence, these bottom two these bottom two shelves are fantasy books. We've got the Fourth Wing series. We've got the Powerless series. We've got who else? Oh, Daggermouth. We got the Sarah oh, the Spell Shop series. So the list goes on. And so now I read cozy fantasy. Cozy fantasy. Some of it's not all that cozy though, because now my horizons have changed. But let me tell now. Oh, another genre I found myself in was historical fiction. I was not a historical fiction girly, was not. But that genre started for me when I read a book called The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. Y'all, I was like, that was stood out. That was really interesting to me. And so I got into historical fiction. Then I read The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. I read that. And these books showed me that historical fiction can be powerful, thought provoking, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes very uncomfortable, but also emotional and important, right? It's important for us to read about our history, and but yet it tells a story, right? And so looking back, I think I've had some amazing reads, and I found that, and I've also found some really good authors, right? I found some really good authors, and I don't know that the impact that some of these books have had on me. It was just very good, and I just love how reading can just broaden your horizons, right? So, the books that stay with me. This is a good question. This is one of the books that stay with me. Now, I don't reread books. I just don't. Do I have them? I like to keep some of them on my shelf. Yes, I do. But I don't. I rarely read. I can tell you the truth. I don't think I've ever reread a book. I don't. But one of the books that stayed with me is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. That book I still think about, and I still like, if I'm gonna recommend a book, I recommend that book. Um, it's dual timeline. It's a sweet story, but the ending, it kind of it grips you. It grips you, and I just thought that was my first entrance into Christina Lauren's, and I love their writing, and I that book stayed with me quite a bit. And I think that's the difference between a book that you just simply enjoy and a book that leaves what I call a heart print, right? It sticks with you. And some you just finish and move on. There's some that's just like, oh, that was a good time. But then there's some that just kind of make you be like, when you think about it, I'm like, I'm giggling. And Book Lovers does that for me too. Um, I just really like those. So when did I become a book person? I talked about like how I got back into reading and how I fell in love with reading. But for me to be this to have this was I tapped into a era, or I would say a genre of things that I just didn't know was existent. When I finished school, like I said, I wanted to get back into reading, and I wanted to read for fun. But then I found podcasts, and I'm thinking, podcasts, and people are just talking about books, and that helped me broaden my book taste too. And people were just, I found some really good podcasts. I would listen. They would talk about books and their fun and their enjoyment, and they were having conversations around books and giving recommendations. And I thought, wow, this is really nice. And I'm just writing these books down. That's when I found Goodreads, and I'm just want to read, want to read, want to read. And I'm thinking, wait, folks just sitting around talking about books? Is this a thing? And I'm like, yes, this is a thing. And I loved it. I love hearing about other people having an experience when reading a book like I did. And mind you, nobody around me reads like I do. Um, Not even close to what I do. Not even barely of what I read. I don't have a lot of in person book friends. Okay. And so then I found BookTube. I was on I was on YouTube. Somehow or another I found BookTube. I don't even remember how I found it. But I started listening to Shaughnessy Schroeder. And from there, y'all, it's done and over with. I found BookTube, and it just my reading life changed for the better. I went from not knowing a lot of authors to knowing a whole new era of authors, and that helped broaden my reading life. And I think that if you look at other people and watch like podcasts, BookTube, and don't get me started on BookTok. BookTok took my reading life. So okay, podcasts, we're growing. BookTube, we're growing. BookTok, up here. Up there. Y'all, I have seen and had internet conversations with some of the nicest people on these platforms, and I have kind of like just found different other books. I found a lot of Black authors, young adult authors, good romance authors, good fiction authors, books that I wouldn't even have known about if I wasn't on these platforms. And even Instagram, Bookstagram is what they call it. Now, I will say for Bookstagram, I'm not as deep in Bookstagram as I am in BookTok and BookTube. Love those formats, love them. And so that just took me to a whole nother level. And I will say, BookTok got me into a book buying girly, right? I was buying, because before I started using my Kindle, because I was just getting books and carrying them around or whatever. And I was talking to one of the girls at my job, at previous job. I said, "Gosh, I wish I didn't have to carry all these books." Well, she introduced me into Kindle. So I bought a Kindle. I've had probably four since. I think either four. No, I've had three since I started that. And but yeah, that's where I so then when I was saw people talking about books on YouTube, and I was like, look, I like this. And here comes T Heart Books, and where I said, I'm going to get me a camera, I'm going to vlog, I'm going to talk about books. So, yeah, so I got on BookTube and I started making videos and I started talking about books, and here I am. And so that is how. So I look back now at my reading journey and from where I started, and I just think it's amazing. This hobby of mine has brought me so much joy. Um, like I said, I've met some nice people. Even when I'm in Barnes and I'm perusing or Books a Million or whatever, book people are very nice people. You will see somebody like, and they're over there, they may see you and they'll be like, hey, how you doing? What are you looking for? This, that, and third. Or start recommending you a book and just talking to you. And I just found it to be, I just found the book community to be very kind. Now, I know that there's some that's not, but my my feed and the people that I have encountered on these social streets and in public have been very kind. And so I when people ask me, why do you read so much? How do you read so much? I just love to read. It's an escape. It gives me, it's like my self-care. Um it's relieves a lot of stress because it's my time to just wind down, grab me a book, get me a coffee, and get cozy in my little reading chair and rub my feet together, and I ain't gotta think about nothing. I ain't gotta think about nothing. It's pure entertainment for me. And so that is my journey in becoming a book girly and how I fell in love with reading again. Now, I do want to share a couple of honorable mentions in here that I really think is a very, these books are, if you are not a reader and you want to get into reading, these are a couple of books that I found that was just superb. And that is Taylor Jenkins Reid, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones and the Six, Beach Read, Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez, um, Kennedy Ryan, the Hoop series, and let's see, there's another one, oh, the Kingmaker series. Loved it, loved. And I'm gonna tell you, one of my favorite books was Tia Williams, 7 Days in June. Y'all, that that book, that's another one that sticks with me. That is a super good book. If you don't read anything else, read Seven Days in June by Tia Williams. Love that book. All right, now I want to hear from you. What book made you fall in love with reading? Tell me about your reading journey. Let's chat about it in the comments below. All right, guys. As oh, hold on. Guys, if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. Thank you. I love y'all. Subscribe to the channel. If you like this video, hit that like button. I really, really appreciate it. And let's chat below. What book made you fall in love with reading again? All right, guys. Until next time, be kind to yourself, be kind to someone else, and find you a good book to read. I'll see you next time. Bye.